The ship from Earth arrived at Thaler Prime Station, just as the twin suns began their slow dance across the purple sky. And inside that ship sat a girl who had no idea how much her life was about to change forever. Ellie. Vance pressed her face against the window and watched the massive station grow larger and larger until it filled her entire view. And her heart beat fast with a strange mix of excitement and fear that she could not quite name or understand. She was 17 years old, and she was about to become the first human child to ever attend the Galactic Unity Academy, a school where the children of 100 different alien species learned together and prepared to become the leaders of tomorrow. Her mother, Ambassador Kira Vance, had been living on the station for 6 months already, working hard to build relationships between Earth and the alien governments that made up the Great Concord. And now Ellie had finally been allowed to join her. "Are you nervous?" her mother asked from the seat beside her, and Ellie turned to look at the woman who had always been her greatest source of strength and comfort. "A little," Ellie admitted, and she tried to smile even though her stomach felt like it was full of butterflies. "What if they do not like me?" Her mother reached over and took her hand, squeezing it gently with warmth and love that needed no words to express. "You are going to be amazing," Kira said. "Just be yourself, and everything will work out fine." But Ellie was not so sure about that, because she had heard the stories about how aliens viewed humans. And those stories were not always kind or welcoming. Humans were new to the galactic community, having only made contact with alien life just 20 years ago. And many species still looked at them with suspicion and doubt. They called Earth a death world because of its harsh conditions, its dangerous animals, its extreme weather, and its heavy gravity that made everything harder and more painful. Some aliens thought humans were primitive and violent, too aggressive and unpredictable to be trusted with the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. Ellie knew all of this, and she worried that her new classmates would treat her like an outsider, like something strange and unwelcome in their perfect world. The ship docked with a gentle thump, and Ellie gathered her bags and followed her mother through the airlock and into the station. Beyond, the first thing she noticed was how bright everything was, with lights of every color shining from every surface and creating a rainbow effect that made her eyes water. The second thing she noticed was the aliens. They were everywhere, walking and floating and crawling through the corridors, and each one was more strange and wonderful than the last. She saw tall creatures with 4 arms and blue skin, small furry beings that scurried along the walls, floating jellyfish-like entities that glowed with inner light, and so many others that she could not even begin to count or describe them all. And every single one of them stopped to stare at her as she passed. Ellie felt their eyes on her, felt their curiosity and their judgment, and she held her head high even though she wanted to shrink down and disappear. "Do not let them bother you," her mother whispered. "They are just curious because they have never seen a human child before." But Ellie could tell that it was more than curiosity in those alien eyes. And she saw something else there too, something that looked a lot like fear. The academy was located in the heart of the station, a massive building made of crystal and light that seemed to pulse with energy and life. Ellie stood at the entrance and looked up at the towering structure, and she felt very small and very alone in that moment. Her mother had to leave for a diplomatic meeting, so Ellie entered the academy by herself, clutching her bag strap with hands that trembled just a little. A tall alien with 4 arms and smooth gray skin met her at the door, and his cold eyes swept over her with clear disapproval. "You must be the human," he said, and his voice was flat and without warmth. "I am Professor Velkith, and I will be your primary instructor during your time here. It is nice to meet you," Ellie said, and she extended her hand for a handshake, the way humans did when greeting someone new. Professor Velkith looked at her hand like it was a dead insect, and he did not take it. "Follow me," he said, and he turned and walked away without waiting to see if she would follow Ellie. lowered her hand, and felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. But she pushed down her hurt feelings and hurried after him. The halls of the academy were full of students, young aliens of every shape and size, and they all stopped their conversations to watch. As Ellie passed by, she heard whispers following her like shadows. And even though she could not understand all of the languages being spoken, she knew that they were talking about her. Deathworlder, someone hissed, and the word was clearly meant as an insult. I heard they eat the flesh of animals, another voice said. Can you imagine anything so disgusting? My father says they cannot be trusted, a third student added. He says they will turn violent without warning. Ellie kept walking and pretended not to hear, but each word felt like a small knife sliding between her ribs. Professor Velkith led her to a classroom where about 30 students were already seated, and every single one of them fell silent when she entered. This is the human exchange student, Velkith announced, and he said the word human like it tasted bad in his mouth. She will be joining your class for the remainder of the term. He pointed to an empty seat at the very back of the room, far away from everyone else, and Ellie walked to it with as much dignity as she could manage. She sat down and placed her bag at her feet, and she felt the weight of 30 pairs of alien eyes pressing down on her from every direction. No one spoke to her. No one smiled at her, and no one made any effort to make her feel welcome. Ellie opened her notebook and stared at the blank pages, and she wondered if coming here had been a terrible mistake. But she was a Vance, and Vances did not give up just because things got hard. So she lifted her chin and prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She had no way of knowing that the biggest challenge was still to come, and that it would arrive in the form of a monster that would change everything she thought she knew about herself and her place in the universe. The academy bell rang to signal the start of class, and Ellie took a deep breath and began her first day at a school where she was the only one of her kind. She was alone. She was afraid, and she was determined to prove them all wrong about humanity. Little did she know that her chance to do exactly that was only a few days away. 3 weeks passed at the academy, and Ellie learned to survive in a world where no one wanted her around. She ate her meals alone in the corner of the dining hall. She studied by herself in the library, and she walked the corridors with her eyes forward and her walls up high. The other students had not become any friendlier, and some of them had actually become worse as time went on. A group of Sithrani boys liked to knock her books out of her hands when they passed her in the hallway, and a Melvery girl named Desha made a game of saying cruel things about humans whenever Ellie was close enough to hear. But Ellie did not complain, and she did not cry, at least not where anyone could see her, because she refused to give them the satisfaction of knowing they had hurt her. She was tough, she was stubborn, and she was determined to make it through this year no matter what. One morning, an announcement came over the academy speakers that made all the students buzz with excitement and nervous energy. Attention all students, the voice said. Today, there will be a special lesson in the main observation theater, and attendance is required for all first-year students without exception. Ellie looked up from her breakfast and saw the other students whispering to each other with wide eyes and trembling voices. What is happening? She asked a small furry creature sitting at the next table, hoping that maybe just this once someone would answer her question. The creature turned and looked at her with something like pity in its large round eyes. It is the fear lesson, it said quietly. They bring creatures from the dark places of the galaxy, monsters so terrible that they give us nightmares for years. And they show them to us so we understand why the Concord must be strong. Ellie felt a chill run down her spine, but she kept her face calm and nodded her thanks to the creature. She had heard rumors about the fear lesson, whispered stories about students who had fainted or screamed or been so scared that they had to leave the academy forever. But she was human, and humans came from a world full of predators and dangers. So surely she could handle whatever they were going to show her when the time came. Ellie walked to the observation theater with the rest of her class, and she noticed that many of the alien students were already shaking and holding on to each other for comfort. The theater was a massive circular room with seats rising up in tiers around the central platform, and the lighting was dim and heavy with shadows that seemed to move on their own. Ellie found a seat near the back, alone as always, and she waited to see what would happen next. Professor Velketh stood on the platform below, his forearms clasped behind his back, and his cold eyes swept across the gathered students with grim satisfaction. "Today, you will learn an important lesson," he announced, and his voice echoed through the silent theater like thunder in the mountains. "You will learn that the galaxy is not a safe place, that there are things out there in the darkness that exist only to destroy, and that the Concord is the only thing standing between civilization and total annihilation." He paused to let his words sink in, and Ellie saw several students grab their seats with white-knuckled grips. "What you are about to see is a living nightmare," Velketh continued. "A creature so dangerous that entire fleets have been sent to contain its kind, and so terrifying that grown warriors weep at the mere sight of it." He raised one of his forearms and made a signal, and the floor of the platform began to open with a low grinding sound that made Ellie's teeth hurt. Something rose up from below, a containment unit made of shimmering energy fields that crackled and sparked with power, and inside that unit was a monster. Ellie had seen scary things before. She had watched horror movies and read frightening books, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of the creature that now stood before her. It was 3 meters tall, maybe more, with a body made of dark muscle and shiny armor plates that looked harder than steel. It had 6 limbs, each one ending in claws that were serrated like knives, and its movements were smooth and predatory like a cat stalking its prey. But the worst part was its head. It had no eyes, no face that Ellie could recognize, just a crown of long tendrils that moved and twisted like snakes searching for something invisible in the air. "This is a Vorax," Professor Velketh said, and his voice had dropped to almost a whisper. "It is an empathic predator, which means it feeds on fear itself. It can sense your emotions, taste your terror, and it knows exactly what scares you most." The creature paced inside its cage, and those horrible tendrils swept across the room like fingers feeling in the dark all around Ellie. Students began to react. A Melvari girl screamed and covered her eyes. A group of Kalathi boys pressed against each other in terror, and somewhere to her left, Ellie heard the thump of someone fainting and falling to the floor. The Vorax made a sound, a deep rumbling noise like stones grinding together, and Ellie understood with sudden clarity that the creature was enjoying this. It was feeding on their fear, drinking it in like water, and it wanted more. "The Vorax cannot be reasoned with," Velketh said over the sounds of crying and whimpering students. "They cannot be bargained with or tamed or controlled. They exist only to hunt and kill and consume, and they are the reason we must always remain strong." The creature continued its pacing, its tendrils reaching toward the terrified students like a predator, choosing which prey to eat first. And then something changed. The Vorax stopped moving, its entire body going rigid like someone had flipped a switch inside its tendrils, which had been sweeping across the whole room. All turned and pointed in a single direction. They pointed at Ellie. She felt the weight of the creature's attention settle on her like a heavy blanket, and she stared back at the eyeless monster with a calm she did not fully understand. The Vorax made a new sound, something different from before, something that sounded almost like a word trying to escape from a throat that had never spoken. And then, to the shock of everyone in the theater, the massive creature lowered itself to the ground, its body pressed flat against the floor of its cage, its tendrils folded back against its skull, and a sound escaped from it that made Professor Velketh stumble backward in disbelief. The Vorax, the nightmare monster that fed on fear, was whimpering. It was whimpering like a scared puppy, and it was staring directly at the human girl who sat alone at the back of the theater. The girl who had not screamed, had not cried, had not shown even the smallest sign of fear. Something impossible was happening. And no one in that room could explain it. Ellie sat frozen in her seat as the most dangerous creature in the galaxy cowered before her, and she had absolutely no idea why. The silence in the observation theater was so thick and heavy that Ellie could almost feel it pressing against her skin. Every single alien in the room had stopped crying, stopped whimpering, stopped moving, and they all stared at the impossible scene unfolding before their eyes. The Vorax, the creature that was supposed to be the ultimate nightmare, lay flat on the floor of its cage with its tendrils pressed tight against its body, and it was making sounds that no Vorax had ever made before. Ellie did not move from her seat, but she could feel her heart beating steady and strong inside her chest. And she wondered why she was not afraid like everyone else. She should have been terrified. She knew that. But something deep inside her refused to feel fear when she looked at the creature. It was strange and confusing, like a memory she could not quite reach, like knowing something without understanding how she knew it. Professor Velkith stood frozen on the platform below, his forearms hanging limp at his sides, and his gray face had turned almost white with shock. "This is not possible," he whispered, and his voice cracked like broken glass. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening. And then it got even more impossible. The Vorax opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth that looked like crystals made of darkness, and it made sounds that slowly, painfully, formed themselves into words. "Let me out." The words were rough and broken, like someone trying to speak a language they had only heard, but never used. But they were unmistakably words. Gasps and screams erupted throughout the theater as the students realized what had just happened. The Vorax had spoken in all the years that the Concord had studied these creatures. In all the battles and captures and experiments, not once had a Vorax ever used language. They communicated through waves of fear and emotion, through psychic projections that bypassed words entirely. But this one had just spoken in Concord Common, the shared language of 100 species, and it had said words that made no sense at all. "Let me out," the creature repeated. And now its voice was clearer, stronger, and filled with a desperate pleading that sounded almost painful. "Please, let me out." Professor Velkith took a step backward, his hands raised as if to protect himself from something he could not understand. "What are you doing?" he demanded, and fear made his voice sharp and high. "What is this?" The Vorax ignored him completely. Its tendrils still pointed at Ellie like compass needles pointing north. "Let me go to her," the creature said. And now its words came faster and more easily. "Let me go to the child of Earth. I will not harm. I will serve. I will protect. Please. Just let me go to her." Every eye in the theater turned to look at Ellie, and she felt the weight of their stares, like physical pressure pushing her down into her seat. The alien students who had ignored her and mocked her and made her feel small now looked at her with expressions of pure disbelief and dawning fear. What was so special about the human girl that a monster would beg to be near her? Ellie stood up slowly, her legs feeling weak and wobbly beneath her, and she walked down the steps toward the platform without really knowing why. "Stay back," Professor Velkith shouted, his forearms waving frantically. "Do not go near it. It will kill you. It will tear you apart." But the Vorax made a sound like a moan of pain at those words, and it pressed itself even flatter against the floor of its cage. "Never harm," it said, and its voice was full of something that sounded almost like sadness. "Never harm the child of Earth. Never hurt, only protect, only serve. Please, please, please." Ellie stopped at the edge of the containment field and looked at the creature that had terrified an entire room. Full of aliens up close, it was even more massive and strange. its body covered in armor plates that seemed to shift and change color in the light. And its tendrils reached toward her through the energy field like flowers reaching for the sun. "Why?" Ellie asked, and her voice came out steady and calm even though part of her mind was screaming that this was crazy. "Why do you want to come to me?" The Vorax made a sound that was almost like a sigh. And when it spoke again, its words were soft and gentle. "You are like us," it said. "Your shape inside, the color of your soul. It is like ours, but bigger, brighter, stronger. You are what we wish to be. You are the Alpha, the leader, the one we follow." Ellie shook her head in confusion, not understanding what the creature was trying to tell her. "I am just a human," she said. "I am just a girl from Earth, the Vorax repeated, and something like awe filled its voice. "The world of hunters, the world of predators, the world that makes souls like fire. Yes, we know of Earth. We have tasted the minds of humans before, and we know what you are." Professor Velkith had been calling for security, and now armed guards came rushing into the theater with weapons drawn and pointed at the cage. "Get that student away from the creature," Velkith commanded. "This is a containment breach. Evacuate all students immediately." But before anyone could move, the Vorax let out a sound that froze everyone in place. It was not a roar or scream. It was something else. Something that bypassed the ears and went straight into the mind, and what it said without words, what it projected into every consciousness in that room, was a single simple message. "I will protect her from anything. I will fight for her. I will die for her. She is my Alpha. And if you try to take her away from me, you will learn why the galaxy fears my kind." The guards hesitated, their weapons wavering, and even Professor Velketh took several steps back from the cage. Ellie stood alone at the edge of the containment field, a small human girl facing a monster that had just declared itself her protector. "Why me?" she asked again, because she still did not understand. "What is so special about me?" The Vorax pressed one of its massive clawed hands against the energy field, reaching toward her as far as it could. "You are human," it said simply. "And humans are not prey. Humans are not victims. Humans are what we have been looking for since the first star was born. You are the apex, the summit, the top of the mountain that all predators wish to climb." The creature paused, and when it spoke again, its voice was filled with something that sounded very much like hope. "You are what we were always meant to follow." Ellie stared at the monster, at its eyeless face and its reaching tendrils, and its body that could tear through metal like paper, and she made a decision that would change everything. "Okay," she said quietly. "I do not understand any of this, but I believe you." She turned to face Professor Velkith and the armed guards, and her voice was strong and clear when she spoke. "Do not hurt it," she said. "It is not trying to harm anyone. It just wants to protect me, so please, put your weapons down." The guards looked at each other in confusion, but something in the human girl's voice made them hesitate, and in its cage, the Vorax began to make a new sound, a low rumbling vibration that seemed to fill the entire room with warmth. It was purring the nightmare. Monster was purring like a cat, and it was purring for the human girl who had somehow become the most important being in its universe. The academy was shut down for 3 days, and Ellie spent most of that time in a small room answering questions from people she had never met before scientists came to study her, scanning her brain and her body with machines that hummed and beeped and flashed lights in her eyes. Military officers asked her the same questions over and over again, wanting to know if she had any special powers or secret training or hidden abilities that could explain what had happened. Diplomats from a dozen different species demanded to speak with her mother, and Ambassador Kira Vance spent countless hours in meetings trying to calm fears and explain something that she herself did not understand, but no one could explain it. Not really. because nothing like this had ever happened before in the entire history of the Concorde. The Vorax remained in its containment cell, but it had changed completely since the day in the theater. It no longer paced or growled or projected waves of fear into the minds of those around it. Instead, it lay quietly on the floor. Its tendrils always pointed in the direction of wherever Ellie happened to be, and it refused to eat anything that the handlers brought it. It is waiting for her, one of the scientists reported with obvious confusion in his voice. It will not do anything until she comes back on the 4th day. A meeting was called in the main council chamber of the station, and Ellie was asked to attend along with her mother. The room was filled with important people from all across the Concorde. Admirals and ambassadors and scientists and leaders of every kind. And they all turned to stare when Ellie walked through the door. She felt small and out of place among all these powerful beings. But she lifted her chin and walked to her seat without showing any fear. Her mother sat beside her and squeezed her hand under the table. And Ellie was grateful for the comfort. An ancient alien rose from her seat at the head of the table. Her body bent with age, but her eyes still bright and sharp with intelligence. She was a Calathi, one of the oldest species in the galaxy, and her skin glowed with soft bioluminescent light that pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. "I am Dr. Yarnth," she said, and her voice was gentle but carried easily through the silent room. "I have spent 300 years studying predatory species, including the Vorax, and I believe I can explain what has happened here." She made a gesture with one of her long, delicate hands, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the table. It showed the Vorax, the human brain, and a complex web of lines and colors that Ellie did not understand. "We have made a terrible mistake," Dr. Yorn said, and sadness filled her voice. "For 20 years, we have looked at humans and seen only what we expected to see. We saw a young species from a dangerous world. Survivors who had somehow managed to reach the stars despite their primitive origins." She shook her head slowly, and the lights on her skin flickered with emotion. "We were wrong. We were so very wrong." She pointed to the display, and the image changed to show a comparison between different species. The Vorax are empathic predators, which means they do not see the world the way we do. They see souls. They see the psychic shape of every living thing. And that shape tells them whether something is prey or predator, victim or threat. She paused to let her words sink in, and Ellie leaned forward with growing interest. "Every species in the Concorde, every single one of us, registers to the Vorax as prey. Our psychic shapes are soft and vulnerable. We taste like food to them. And that is why they hunt us." Admiral Kethrol, a massive Sithrani warrior with scars covering his blue skin, slammed his fist on the table. "Get to the point," he growled. "What does this have to do with the human girl?" Dr. Yornth turned her glowing eyes toward Ellie, and something like wonder filled her ancient face. "Humans are different," she said softly. "When the Vorax looks at a human, it does not see prey. It sees something it recognizes. Something familiar." She touched the display, and a new image appeared showing two psychic signatures side by side. "This is the psychic shape of a Vorax," she said, pointing to one, "and this is the psychic shape of a human." They were almost identical. Two burning patterns of aggressive energy and predatory power. Humans do not register as food to the Vorax. Dr. Yornth continued. They register as apex predators, as alphas, as the top of the food chain, and to a Vorax. That means only one thing. She turned to face the assembled leaders, and her voice rang clear and strong. To the Vorax, humans are not prey to be hunted. They are leaders to be followed. Silence filled the chamber as the implications of her words sank in. Ambassador Kira Vance stood up slowly, her face pale but her voice steady. "Are you saying that my daughter can control the Vorax?" "Not control," Dr. Yornth corrected gently. "Lead. The Vorax are pack creatures at their core. They have always searched for something stronger than themselves to follow, something worthy of their loyalty, and they have never found it. Until now. She gestured toward Ellie, and every eye in the room focused on the young human girl. Earth is what you call a death world, the doctor explained. It is a planet where everything is dangerous, where predators fill every environment, where even the smallest creatures can kill. And humans evolved in that world for millions of years. She let out a breath that might have been a sigh. That evolution left its mark on the human soul. It wrote predator into your very essence. Not just any predator, but apex predator, the hunter at the top of the pyramid. The thing that fears nothing because nothing is above it. Ellie felt strange hearing these words. Like she was learning a secret about herself that she had always known but never understood. The Virax feel this when they look at humans, Dr. Yorant said. They feel what we cannot see, and what they feel makes them want to bow down and serve. It makes them want to follow and protect and fight for the human who stands before them. Admiral Kethrel made a sound of disbelief in his throat. This is ridiculous, he said. Humans are small and weak. They have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. How can they be apex predators? Dr. Yorant smiled, and there was something sad in that smile. You still do not understand, she said. Humans do not need claws or armor because they have something far more dangerous. She touched the display one more time, and it showed images of human history. Hunting parties chasing mammoths, warriors facing lions, explorers conquering every corner of their deadly world. Humans have the soul of a predator, she said. And that soul tells them one simple truth that most species never learn. She looked directly at Ellie, and her words seemed to fill the entire room. Nothing is too big to kill. Nothing is too dangerous to hunt. Nothing is above them on the food chain, and they will never, ever give up until they have won. Ellie met the ancient alien's eyes, and for the first time since this whole strange journey began, she felt like she understood she was human, and being human meant something far more powerful than anyone had ever realized. The council debated for 2 more days about what to do with the Virax, and Ellie was not allowed to see it during that time. Some leaders wanted to destroy the creature immediately, arguing that it was too dangerous to keep alive, no matter how it behaved around humans. Others wanted to study it more, to run experiments and tests to understand exactly how this strange bond worked. A few suggested sending it back to the frontier, releasing it into the wild space where its kind roamed free, but none of them asked Ellie what she thought they should do. And that made her angry in a way she had never felt before. She was just a human girl, they said. Too young and too inexperienced to make such an important decision, but somehow she was also important enough that a monster had begged to serve here on the morning of the 3rd day. Ellie made a choice. She waited until her mother left for another meeting, and then she slipped out of their quarters and made her way through the station toward the containment area. The guards at the door tried to stop her, but she looked at them with steady eyes and spoke with a voice that left no room for argument. That creature chose me, she said. It asked for me, and I have the right to see it. So either let me through or call someone who can actually stop me. The guards looked at each other nervously, and after a long moment they stepped aside and let her pass. The containment area was cold and dark, lit only by the glow of the energy fields that kept the captured creatures locked in their cells. Most of the cells were empty now, the other specimens from the fear lesson having been removed and shipped elsewhere, but one cell still held a prisoner. And as Ellie approached it, she could see the massive shape of the Virax lifting its head to meet her. You came, the creature said, and its voice was filled with joy and relief that seemed too big for words to hold. I knew you would come. I felt you getting closer. I have been waiting for you. Ellie stopped at the edge of the containment field and looked at the being that had turned her life upside down. They are deciding what to do with you, she said. Some of them want to kill you." The Vorax made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. "I know," it said. "I can taste their fear and their anger. They do not understand what I am, or we could be together. They only see the monster they expect to see." "What do you see when you look at me?" Ellie asked, because she still needed to understand. "Why me? Why did you choose me out of everyone in that room?" The Vorax rose slowly and moved closer to the containment field, its tendrils reaching toward her with gentle movements that seemed wrong coming from such a dangerous creature. "I see fire," it said softly. "I see a burning star wrapped in soft skin. I see millions of years of hunting and fighting and surviving compressed into a single small form. I see everything my kind has ever wanted to be." It pressed against the energy field, and Ellie could see it trembling with emotion. "We are predators," the Vorax continued. "But we are also pack animals. We need something to follow, something to give our lives meaning and purpose. And for thousands of years, we have searched the galaxy for an alpha worthy of our devotion." Its tendrils curled in on themselves, a gesture that somehow conveyed deep sadness. "We never found one. Every species we encountered was prey, soft and weak and full of fear. And so we hunted them because that was all we knew how to do. But it was never enough. We were always hungry, always searching, always alone." The creature's voice dropped to barely a whisper, and then we found humans. And for the first time in our long, terrible history, we found something we could follow instead of hunt. Ellie felt tears prick at her eyes, and she did not try to stop them from following this creature that everyone called a monster was actually just lonely, just searching for a place to belong, just wanting someone to give its existence meaning. She understood that feeling better than anyone, the Council might still decide to kill you, she said, and her voice was thick with emotion. "I know," the Vorax replied, "but I do not care what they decide. I only care about what you decide. If you accept me, then I will serve you until the stars burn out. And if you reject me, then I will accept death gladly, because at least I will have searching for." Ellie closed her eyes and thought about everything that had happened. About the loneliness she had felt at the academy. About the cruelty of students who had never given her a chance. About the fear and suspicion that followed humans everywhere in the galaxy. And she thought about this creature, this nightmare monster that everyone feared, which had looked at her and seen something beautiful. She made her choice. "I accept you," she said. And she pressed her hand against the containment field. "I do not know what that means or what we are supposed to do, but I accept you." The Vorax let out a sound that shook the entire room. A cry of joy and triumph and overwhelming gratitude that resonated in Ellie's very bones, and then it did something impossible. It reached through the containment field, the energy crackling and sparking around its clawed hand. And it touched Ellie's palm with infinite gentleness. The field should have stopped it, should have kept them apart. But somehow the creature's desire to reach her was stronger than the technology designed to hold. Ellie felt a connection snap into place between them, like a door opening in her mind that she had never known was there. And suddenly, she could feel the Vorax's emotions as clearly as her own joy, loyalty, devotion, and a fierce protective love that burned like a sun. The containment field flickered and died. And for the first time, the Vorax was free. It could have attacked the guards, could have rampaged through the station, could have proven every fear about its kind to be true. Instead, it lowered itself to the ground at Ellie's feet and pressed its massive head against her legs. "My alpha," it rumbled. "My leader, my purpose, I am yours forever." Ellie placed her hand on top of its head, feeling the rough texture of its armor plates and the soft warmth of its skin beneath. "I think I will call you Shadow," she said with a small smile, "since you are going to be following me everywhere." The creature that was now Shadow made the purring sound again, louder and deeper than before, and Ellie felt its happiness flood through the connection between them. When the guards finally worked up the courage to enter the containment area, they found the human girl sitting on the floor with the monster curled around her like a protective shell. And they knew that everything in the galaxy had just changed. Word spread quickly through the Concord. The story of the human girl and the Vorax that had chosen to serve her. Some species were terrified by the news, worried about what it meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. Others were fascinated, eager to learn more about the strange connection between humans and these deadly creatures. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humans were no longer the weak newcomers that could be ignored or dismissed. They were something else entirely, something that the galaxy had never seen before. And when Ellie returned to the academy 1 week later, walking through the halls with a 3-meter nightmare padding silently at her side, no one laughed at her or mocked her or called her names. They stepped aside and watched her pass with respect and wonder in their eyes. The human girl who had been alone was alone no longer. She had found her pack. And together, they would show the galaxy exactly what it meant to be human. The universe would never look at Earth the same way again.